out of the comfort zone. I used to go with extreme sports and any type of things musically that would push my envelope to the nth degree. Like the challenge of, I don't know if I can do that. Okay, so I'm going to try. And I'm going to put every ounce of effort that I can possibly do to push that envelope. You know,
right.
It's like with rock climbing or skateboarding or whatever, you know, just. But I've always done it in a solo context. You know, it wasn't like, oh, let's get a band together to kind of push it. It was like, no, I just want to be able, me on the rock face alone with, the carabiner and a rope to keep it alive.
Right.
My feet in the air. And I loved it. Like, I couldn't get enough of it. You know, it's one of that adrenaline junkie type of thing.
Totally.
Do you think that type of mentality is what drives your creative process? Like, I'm not calling you a complete...
No. I know exactly what you're saying. I actually, this is what it is, but I think trauma drives it. I think being severely not well adjusted to society. I mean, seriously. I mean, I felt alienated from maybe the age of 11, and I didn't respond well to the Reagan era. Take that however you like. I would never adopt victimhood. Of course not, never. But like I just had a lot of trauma and alienation. I'm definitely ADHD for sure. Now there's a couple ways that plays out. Like I'm able to hyper focus. Yeah. I'm very obsessive. I have an addictive personality. So if I'm interested in a musical project, I'll like focus on every little detail till it's like this pristine jewel. So that's like my superpower. And I have a wide bandwidth for that. So I could do that for multiple projects because that's how I feel better. I feel vulnerable and not in control. Maybe traumatized a little bit by that in terms of like human destiny, society, systems of control that have been set up that I have no say in, stuff like that. So, the composition, making something that inspires others, controlling that world is profoundly therapeutic. And so, it's a half about like push it to the nth degree because, I mean, this is almost giving these Christian like evangelicals some credit here, but it's almost like I'm addicted to adventurous music. And even now, like once a certain precipice has been passed, now the next thing has to be crazier. It has to give me a greater adventure, So even if retro is crazy, it's not crazy enough. It's like never crazy enough. It's like nothing's enough, like that kind of feeling. So it's kind of both of those together. One is like I feel that I can define myself from self-actualization within my own musical environment. And I feel this sort of like deep cosmic plane connection that's hard to talk about or articulate, but it's definitely there. And it kind of like, it's like you get like released from all the tension of society and identity. You kind of get to be invisible. And I think that like being addicted to that feeling, you know what I mean? Like, and it just keeps going deeper. And, maybe addicted is the wrong word. But, that it goes into the Dionysian thing again, which is Dionysian psyche is like ecstatic, intoxicated, metasensory, like madness, like intoxication and madness. I mean, I absolutely think that's, it's an anti-order because my upbringing from a certain point was like so, it was just hyper filled to the brim, my schedule. So there was no room to breathe. And then there was all this pressure and it was just like, I just burst, I just couldn't take it. And just like this madness comes from that, it's not rage. It's like, it's Dionysian. I mean, that's the word for it. It's like shit Nietzsche talked about. You know what I mean? It's like it's Apollo versus Dionysus, and in me, Dionysus won 100%, and then attracted me to other Dionysian like artists, which is 100% Trey and Mr. Bungle, and 100% Zorn. It's absolutely Dionysian. It's not like this OCD environment. I mean, it's ironic that I was so into Tool and Meshuggah, King Crimson, Yes, or whatever, because they're just so OCD as environments, just like hyper controlled, right? Like, I'm obviously not thriving in those environments. I don't respond well in those environments. So that's not going to be what I'm going to do. Like, I'm definitely feeling way more comfortable in like Bungle, like wild worlds. Like, I'm looking for wildness, not like controlled environments, and that's why I think I ended up with Zorn, because I remember the first time I heard Electric Masada, Mountains of Madness, and it was just like everything like made sense. I was like, this is like the kind of music I want to do. It was political and existential and hyper musical, spiritual, all that stuff. It's just everything was beyond music in a way. It was kind of like a purpose realized. And that's again what motivates me to play with other people, because I don't think I could reach these levels just alone. Like, I need Kenny Growhowski or Larry Kordowitz or John Zorn or Trey Spruance to be like, I'm meeting you here. Will you meet me here? And then now I'm going here. And it's just this thing. If I'm just sitting in front of my computer, it's like I'll go to here, but like it's just there's something missing. And so that's always why I've been motivated by working with people, because I want to learn like a global music language. I really do.
Man, you hit on some. It's funny you mentioned the ADHD. We've talked about that a few times on here, in particular. And Adam had mentioned that he may or may not have it right. But we were talking about the hyper-focus thing. Like, all of us, like we can just dive into music, and then you're like, man, I didn't eat all day, and I didn't like go to the bathroom, or like. And it could be like 18 hours later or something, and you're so into it and productive, and like it's hard to explain that to people that don't have that.
Yeah. No, and I have issues too sometimes when I work with people. I did a session the other day, and like I was gonna go for like 12 hours.
Right.
I mean, and they were like 3 hours. They're like, we're done, man, and we're done. And I'm like, what? And it's like, I'm like, because I'm used to just going so hard. Or like me and Larry sometimes when we were at Spiraling Abyss, that was like 14 hours straight session. We just wrote the whole song, 14 hours. And we just going crazy. It's like all the tuplets and like figuring out we could use them. It's like just this, that's one thing Zorn says, the best moments to me when you capture them on a record is like the thrill of discovery. Something's like there's this spark that happens. It's like worth getting. It's worth putting on the table.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And these albums are more like totems to me than they are like, I have a career, because it's not played out with material prosperity. Really, it's more abstract, the value, which I'm fine with actually, because I feel like it keeps it very clear. Yeah.
So, one of the with the Apollo and the Dionysian thing, is that just for lack of better term, a Jungian ideal, or is this some type of?
I think it's something Nietzsche talked about, where just generally like I mean he wrote about it, but just generally beyond Nietzsche, it was Apollo represents order, reason, control, self-consciousness, and Apollo made art too, and Dionysus was like the opposite, literally the opposite, right? It's like the mad, intoxicated, ecstatic, sensory,
right, unorganized or something, right?
Unorganized, disruptive, blasphemous. He was also like, I mean, the mythologies are so fucked up. I mean, he but just generally in terms of art and just like outlook, right? Predetermination and, being hyper self-conscious, right? You guys are played enough music to know that doesn't really work when you improvise at all, right? You need just sort of no thought.
Mhm.
You need open channel, and that's Dionysian. You know, you could also say it's more feminine, but it's just not trapped in itself. It's not predetermined. It's a way of interacting with a different energy. When you sit there, when you plan every single note to Sibelius and your DAW, and it's all quantized, it's a different interaction, right? It's not rising to that. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but they're just very different approaches. And I realized like, you know, before I understood Zorn, I would just get the stuff tight and be like, it's tight though. And there was points where like, because the way Zorn is, it's not just a job, so it's not going to be redundant. It's like, oh, you did that. Like I remember we started with like kind of like simple riffs and Medeski ripping, and then he started giving me like crazy lines that are really hard that they teach at like Juilliard, like just nested tuplet insanity. And then I was able to do that, and then he upped the whole thing, and then he made harder lines and added all these other things. He's like, oh, and you could do the polyrhythm. Oh, and you can do the tuplets. Okay, superimposition of, like, he just kept adding things. You know what I mean? And then it got to a point where like Chaos Magick, which is a new band with Brian Marcella, which is Simulacrum plus Brian Marcella, like that was a totally new thing, but it was almost like similar enough that I just practiced it the same way. And I kind of had this bad habit of just, that I didn't realize till this record, of just like practicing these tuplet lines, like all gained out and compressed. You know what I mean? And like, I remember getting to that session and I'm like, I'm going to bring a Strat. So it's super hip. It's different. I'm going to bring a Strat and I'm going to play through the Mesa. It's going to be so weird. It's not going to sound anything like Simulacrum. Yeah. That's a great idea. So again, his first song is insane. It's like 132. It's like 5 tuplets, 7 tuplets, all on 4 strings. Like just totally precise. And I was like, I had it with the fucking death metal pedal on. and then Zorn's like, clean guitar. And I'm like, and he didn't want the neck pickup. I was like, neck pickup? He's like, that sounds like crap. Let me get, so I literally fucking played this insane, like really techie, like Holdsworth, like blotted science type, insane tuplet line, like bridge pickup on the Strat, because it's just curveballs like that. So it's just it's almost like he knows that I'm expecting certain things and he writes it into the score to like fuck with me. So I've realized now it's like this like weird, it's just like, he forces this 360 prep, and I've yet to be redundant as even though it's been like 14 albums since 2015, right? It's like, I'm not trying to repeat anything I did for him yet. Like there's elements that repeat, but like he's basically asking me to do different shit each time or adding something. I'm pretty impressed with that, because again, it's like, it's not for its own sake. He sees it as a vehicle to push us, and he's like, what's your breaking point?
Yeah, right.
What's your breaking point? What's your breaking point? And it's like, okay, it actually is pretty awesome, because it's like, I love cooking shows. Gordon Ramsay, I like Gordon Ramsay. And he does remind me of Gordon Ramsay, you know, when he was do another take. It's like take 11. And it's like, you know, it's like I'm in the kitchen and I have to cook him the perfect thing. And he's like, you're capable. What's your best? What's your best? You know, that's kind of cool. I feel very lucky, because I feel like everyone else in Simulacrum, they went to conservatory or got their ass kicked by band leaders, and it happened another way. And I didn't really get that because I was the band leader, you know? So like, if I didn't get that from Zorn, I just wouldn't get it. And he's not a dick about it. He's right every single time. And like most of the time we use the solos that are like the final take. So he knows. He can hear that there's something missing. And again, it's this like, it's not conscious. It's not a conscious radar. It's this weird hyper empathy that's picking up emotions. Like, what's up with you? Well, this solo's, you're really not lucid. What's going on with you? You know, it's like psychological, right? Like, it's pretty interesting. So all that stuff made me think about like the whole space of composition and improv just being psychic at root. Beyond, you know, our conscious mind is just completely like has no idea. And that, you know, that might sound maniacal or maybe a little radical, but that's just where I've been at lately.
The thing that's kind of been popping into my head is like, there's 2 things. One of them is a quote by Michael Hedges that says, the secret of discovery is extremely sweet. which is like one of my absolute favorite quotes by him. It's like, yeah, when you're sitting there and you're plugging away for hours and hours and you just do one thing and it's like, that's it. That's it.
Right.
That comes
Right.
from,
Yeah. Boom. It doesn't matter if it took 18 hours or 18 minutes. It's just one of those things where it just happens. And that's better than everything else. Like
it is. It's a thrill discovery for sure.
And then there was another thing that was going on, but I totally lost it. Totally lost. I hope it'll come back. But this is. I'm loving this conversation. Absolutely.
Awesome. I'm glad. I hope I'm not ranting for too long. It's fun to talk this stuff through because, one thing, Zorn's very private, but he really helped me out because I realized that a lot of the way I was raised and the way I was seeing things was very convoluted by the culture. And it's like, it sounds like alarmist, but it's just true. Like if you take I need to be an open channel to this hidden dimension, right? Like nothing can be in the way, which means your parents and friends can't be in the way, which means your school can't be in the way, which means your stupid little town can't be in the way, which means your shithole country can't be in the way. Now I'm getting canceled, right? But seriously, like all that stuff is in the way. And no one knows. And it's for the artist to reach out with their mind and empty it and just like a purification process. And, it's people that don't understand, they think you're crazy, but it's just, it's alchemy. It's psychic alchemy. And you have to cleanse yourself to just have any gold come through. You're not going to be the cleverest of them all. That's not a real thing. That's a ridiculous conception Americans and jazz school has created for everyone. And that is just not helping anyone. We're not, if someone else is successful, that doesn't mean they took success from you. Like we all have the ability, if we let go of marketing and scenes, to be distinct aliens in terms of composition and improv. That was the message of the 60s and all the eras where it was going really well. So I would like to see that come back, stop with the quantization, stop with the all the white keys in every song, no key changes, everything about sex and money. It's just like Reaganism on its deathbed. It's like we're nihilistic because we know what's coming. And it would be great if the promise of music is the community that's possible. It really could, save the world enough. There's times I get crazy messages from people. I felt like I wanted to kill myself and I put retro on and I feel better now. And it's they sent me that message to be even if it only happened once, right? So, and I have no delusions. I understand it's weirdo art and no, most people won't like it. But the people that do like it really like it. And if it gets inside them like that, the whole thing is worth it. It doesn't matter who doesn't understand it. It's not important, and this is sort of self-actualization that's at stake right now. It's it's the art culture is it's not about that. It's about beating down others. And it's we're just in the fucking jungle with weeds up to the fucking sky and no machete. You know what I mean? That's just total toxic shit. So I really try to transcend that. And, beyond Zorn's music, which I understand some people may, some of it's redundant, that's fair criticism. But beyond that, the most incredible thing he's done is the community. And that's the main message. I'm not thriving on my own, period. I'm thriving with other people. You know what I mean? And America, this hyper individualist shit, it's shutting that down because it's well, the audience member looked at that member of the band. I don't feel, I won't say who this member was, but I played with a member that was this fucking petty. Because literally, no one talked to me after the show, so it wasn't worth it. It was okay, cool. It's that's what music is. Because I'm sure Coltrane was like that, right? No one talked to me after the show, so I don't care what I played.
Yeah, right.
So that's what it's about. Is someone talking to you after the show? Give me a break. That could only come from materialism and Western self-flagellation. You know what I mean? So I just think we gotta look all these authoritarian systems that are trying to hold us down and call a spade a spade. It could be a choice at the end of the day, right? The reason Zorn's system works is every impure element gets removed, musical or person or promoter, venue, It all gets removed, and it's just pure shit. Now, even if I have to do that in the country with like under 20 people and go out on a DIY tour, I'm going to try to make that happen. Like, even if it's on the ground floor, and I'm going to stay in touch with those people. And I'm better. Here's my thing. I don't care about what you're doing. You know, and I'm very bad at listening to people's shit. I try to be better, but like I think we all are. Choice paralysis is information overload. It's constipated. It's natural. But I really, you know, the community thing is the main thing that music can do, because it makes people feel like attached to something that's bigger than themselves, and that's the antidote.
Exactly. And I'm jumping because I remember my second point that it came to me when you it's like that's what I was gonna and I was talking with a musical friend of mine. We were talking about the creative process, and there's a point in that process where it's not a matter of the individual self writing. It's more like it's just the music itself has just started writing itself. Like you're just the conduit to an extent.
Yes, and I think that, you know, Zorn says that too. I'm just turning on the fucking faucet, and it's like, you know, I feel that way sometimes.
Yep.
You know, when you're really keyed in and you're feeling non-distracted, and just like your emotions are out of the way, and you're just this clear. This subconscious is right there. Yep. It's right there.
Oh yeah.
And you know, the irrationality that comes out of that is profound. Sometimes it's, you know, it's transformative. It's transcendental, right? It's like, it's what's the unseen. It must be made seen, right? Like, so that, you know, it's not. This is what's motivating me, not guitar. Right. So guitar got to here, and then it's like, it can't be about guitar. It just can't, you know, and it's like, it still might sound like to people that it's about guitar, but it's blatantly not. It's, for me, it's about that.
Yeah.
Like the guitar is just this wand that allows me to enter that space. But like, it's really like time and space interaction in the abstract. And, you know, I wish that we saw music that way and not as like, you know what I mean? Like, just a production template mixed with LARPing and Comic-Con. You know what I mean? Sorry. That's
all good. So, yeah, I get the point. I get it. It's cool.
Sorry about that. That's actually.
No, it's all good.
Speaking of the devil. Larry's coming over. We're going to finish this piece, actually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Give him my love.
Yeah, hey, I'll tell him what's up.
It reminded me when we were what Adam's point and everything too is, I think it was a Stephen King book on writing or whatever or something that I saw. But it's basically like when you write written word, the best way to write is to just brain dump. Right? You don't go back. You don't fix all your edits. You don't do all that stuff because if you do, it gets all disjunct and disjointed. Right? It's hard to do that sometimes though with music, right? It's like it's easy. Like I'm an improviser, so I do a lot of improvisation, and I let that happen. But a lot of times when I'm writing, it's hard to just be like, just follow what's coming out because you like you said you want to be clever. Or you're like, oh, I could have done better. But what the best stuff is when you just let it happen. Try not to have any ego about any of it, right? Because you can always go back. I guess the other point of that is when you do the brain dump, you still have to go back and edit it. So you go back and you edit, and then you clean up those imperfections, and you can smooth out lines. But the same thing with music, right? You could write it all out, then you can rephrase something, or you can, you know, just to make it fit whatever idea you had.
Exactly.
Have you found yourself doing that kind of thing too? Have you? You know, we kind of talked through that, but like going from now it's like just a brain dump, like just let it happen and then we'll smooth it out after the fact.
Well, philosophy is such a big part of it. Like It's more about philosophy than guitar in a way. Guitar is just the second level. Like it's almost more about philosophy. And as far as that goes, like, you know, when I teach students, because I teach some people, and they're coming from sort of a jaded rock band thing, like some of them went to music school and absolutely hated the culture and are feeling very cynical and stuck. And I do very well with them. And I'll get some of them to a point where I'll just be like, just put on the click and improvise in front of me. And they're like, what? What do you mean? And I'm like, put on the click and improvise in front of me. Now it's after we do a lot of tuplets and I prep them with language and stuff.
Yeah.
Once I get them into the tuplet world a little bit, and just play, like focus on the tuplets and don't think about the notes and just play and stop where you would breathe. They're like, whoa, I'm actually doing it. And they kind of like have this sort of epiphany, so to speak. And I do a similar thing, I have a lot of strategies, but like my general strategy for the last few years is to just put on the click. There's a couple ways I go about it. You just put on the click. I'll literally either sing gibberish into my phone, like with a made up language that is like tuplet based, with a metronome going on, but I'll sing stuff that I wouldn't be able to play in the moment. That's very tuplety and bandy timey and weird. And then I'll take those tracks, I'll cut out like the pieces I like, I'll make a song out of them, then I'll transcribe it in Sibelius, then I'll make the tab, then I'll play it. So that's one approach. Then, another approach I'll, and Tim, to go to what you were saying earlier, there's a quote, I forget who said it. This is one of my favorite quotes. Is like, I do all my, experimenting before I compose, which has kind of been my philosophy, which is like, get all the elements as a separate process. So do not just sit and I tell students this too, like that, because they get confused, because I'll teach someone how to write a phrase, like any phrase that's rhythmic, or like, you just, all right, here's a rhythmic language, just make a phrase with this rhythmic, like no problem, right? But then make a second phrase and they're just like, and they have no idea what to do. And they're just overwhelmed by choice paralysis. And then it just sits there for years, right? And it's like, see, that's the problem though. It's like, you got to get all the elements together before you even arrange anything, and I realized, I don't think I understood that even when I was making Regressions. We literally went like we were writing a book at a typewriter and very slowly made each chapter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like I realize now it's more nonlinear, which is, like David Lynch, the way he makes his shows, or James Joyce, any nonlinear story, like,
right.
It's like I can come up with it nonlinear, and like it's this mystical path to find the arrangement. And now there's not one arrangement that, I think that's the other problem with the conscious mind. I think once you engage with the subconscious a little more, I think I really didn't get for a long time, like how open it was, how there's like billions of ways in each step of the process for each part to work out, like literally billions. It's not even trillions. It's like there's trillions of arrangements, there's billions of ways to change the phrasing. There's like change one variable, like there's all these tools, like it's just so many ways. I started to realize that. And that, that helped me understand, like, I guess how to just like get out of the way, because the music wants to do what it does. And if you're aware of the whole thing in the abstract, you're going to notice what's missing and just get out of the way and let it happen.
Right.
And that's, when I was in my conscious mind, it's just like being on the surface, and it's like, what's in there? I don't get it. Someday, why? How come they get it? It's like, I remember seeing Trey and Zorn and not understanding how they got that good. And now I feel like not totally peers, but I feel like at least I understand like how they're doing what they're doing. Like I understand their mindset a little more. It's really more coming from philosophy and what part of yourself to engage in, and how to like where you're coming from with music. Because if I'm coming from like a place that Berkeley's telling me to come from, or a place that Instagram's telling me to come from, or like YouTube, or gospel chops, or metal sucks, you pick any of these things, it's like a disaster out of the gate. It's completely like, okay, like if there's a way to like get in there and have any of them appreciate me, that's fine, but I'm not sucking up to that, like, period. You know what I mean? And I'm just gonna like do my own thing and engage with my real alien power, which is, the scenes are in the way because they're making everyone doubt their subconscious, because they're basically glorified production templates. I mean, especially when I see these ads and it's like, download melancholic chord progressions. Here's crust punk beats. Here's all the crust punk beats you need to make songs. Here's doom metal beats. Here's old school death metal beats. Here's gent beats. It's like literally pre-written MIDI packs. And it's like, so dude, I mean, a lot of music sounds like this, but I mean, are people literally just like using the same chord progressions from the same packs and just dragging them in and maybe changing the key and tempo and then just putting a pre-written drum track on top of it and then quantizing all of it? I mean, come on, like, oh my God. I mean, that is like, words can't express how little. I have no words, and it's like that's the standard right now. So that's all I'm saying is like.
So I'm wondering.
There's one. The final thing I'll say is there's one aspect where you could be like, "There's too much music. What's the fucking point? You're crazy, right?" But then it's like, but that's most of the music. So once you're like, "Fuck quantization, fuck tonality, fuck the white keys, fuck 4/4, fuck you." It's like maybe you're more in your own line, and there's only like under 100 bands in that line. So now you're not in the same line with everyone that's doing that. You know what I mean? Sure. And that's kind of been my philosophy. Yeah. So
no, I was wondering. I remember I was at. I don't know if you ever went to NAMM or one of those shows.
Yeah,
I had a gig down in Nashville for the summer NAMM, and I remember walking around. And it was like. This is my natural reaction to like everything. If I hear too much, like if I hear somebody play something, like when I was walking around and I've done that, like it's in my playing, I'm like, I got to get that out of my playing. Like, you know, so there's like, if I sound too, and it's not like a conscious, like I think it's just more like I don't need to do the thing that somebody else did. So if I start to sound too much like something else, which is natural, right? Especially as you get better as a musician, gosh, you can hear stuff and practically reproduce it in seconds, you know, because you've gathered enough language or whatever that you can basically mimic anything in a lot of ways.
Right.
It's so easy to get sucked into sounding like that, but as soon as I'm like conscious about it, and or like when I was walking around NAMM, you're like, oh, that bend thing that they did, or that, like any of these kind of like little musical things, my natural reaction is just to be like, I don't want to sound like that thing. But I'm kind of wondering, like, Cleric in another way is almost more inclusive than exclusive, if that makes sense. When I think about it,
that's what I like to hope. As abrasive and insane and like filled to the brim as it is, and how unrelenting and psychotic and like violent, you know, on the surface, I do like to think that it's accessible. And one of my favorite Cleric memories, literally ever, was in 2018. We went down to Mexico City, and Mexico loves us. We actually have real fans down there. Like it feels like rock stars when we go down there. They pay for our flight and everything. We had like a government sponsored show in this really nice park. 1,500 people came out, and there was a GIF that went on Instagram after that of this like 4-year-old kid on his dad's shoulders. It was during Spiraling Abyss, which is our like Juilliard avant-garde new music, classical avant-garde metal opus, John. It's like, okay, so it's like literally like, you're not smart enough. Like that's what you would think, right? Like, no, because it's basically the kid just hears 1, 2.
Yeah.
Okay. So he just hears 1, 2. And he's like lost in a trance. And again, it goes back to like, you know, it's kind of like
the vibe, the energy.
Like I want to play the audience. Like I'm not doing a trick to be like, I know about the tablet because I'm smart. And I practiced it because I'm better. Like that's what school wants you to do, right? Yeah. It's like, no, it literally can't be academic or I failed. It has to feel like, you know, Lightning Bolt or Hella. It has to be, you know, or Primus or anything that's viscerally, you know, you feel it in your stomach, basically. Like not like, well, it's very interesting.
Yeah, no, you absorb that language, and now it's part of your language.
Yeah, right. And like I, you know, nothing made me feel better than that Mexico City show, because that was just like mostly kids, you know, we're doing these really epic convoluted songs, and like especially when we get into the tuplets, and it's just like I don't know, it's just validating, because from my perspective, like that was a risk. No one's on it, not even Meshuggah. Hella's kind of on it. That's the closest thing, but the guitarist isn't even doing it. Only Zach Hill, and I'm not convinced he even knows what he's doing. So make a conscious effort. 6 against 4, 7 against 4, 11 and 9, same space. You know, like just really taking risks. You know, like that's what's so thrilling. And that to me was what Cleric is about. And it was, I remember when it dawned on us, And I don't know, I don't mind admitting this, whatever. Like everyone else in the band at the time, when Regressions came out, it was like, Aloe's the first track. And I'm like, whoa, guys, Jesus. It's like, seriously? Shouldn't it be like the middle or the first track? They're like, it's the first track. And it took me like a few months to be like, no, yeah, that's the first track. It's the only way. And I realized it had to be the first track. And it's like, maybe it only makes sense to us, but I'm pretty sure that had to be the first track.
Yeah.
And, I'm laughing as I'm saying this because the stuff that you come up with that makes you laugh, to me, like, that's the good ideas, right? The stuff you come up with, and you're like, that's pretty cool. That sounds good. Like, just take any gent riff, like, it's like, I'll never care about that. I could write shit like that all day because that's how easy and tropey that is. Anyone, probably guitarist, could do it. They literally could sing that shit. That's why fuck gent, right? In a way. So it's like, I'm gonna throw that all away. And there's times when I cast the net with the subconscious and it's like 99% trash. And I have to be like, it's not me. Something today. And it's like, but there's one thing in there that's like, wow, listen to that. Okay. Put that aside for later. And it's like, so that was worth it. That 40-minute like thing that didn't make the GDP any money. Like, how dare you waste that time? No, that was absolutely worth the time for that fucking 1 5-second thing. Yes, it was worth 40 minutes.
Absolutely.
Don't you dare tell me I should contribute to GDP instead of doing that. That's some nonsense. But yeah, whatever. That's my weird shit coming out.
So Matt,
but you see, all the American stuff's in the way. The materialism's a huge problem.
oh, definitely,
Yeah.
Matt, so what can you tell us about? So what new projects are coming out or whatever? So you mentioned you recorded 2 Cleric albums, which
2 Cleric albums. Just one of them's a Bagatelles record. It's 19 songs long, and it's not like any other Cleric record because the longest song is under 4 minutes. It's like longest song is 3:58. Every other song's 2 minutes or less. So there's a lot of songs under a minute. But we're really proud of it. Honestly, it's one of the best Cleric albums ever. It was just, and it's the first thing we did in our studio that we made. And then we, before that, started the next original Cleric in the same studio. But obviously, that's a more drawn out process. So I'm wrapping that up now. Almost done the guitars. And so that's a 5 songs album and longer. So classic Cleric style. So yeah, 24 songs. I'm thrilled. And then, I got this other record.
iNFiNieN has a new record.
iNFiNieN has a new record coming out. Double vinyl. And that should be out next year. And then this instrumental band that I did before recording Bagatelles, called Saratma, which is with this drummer Sarah Neidorf. She's used to drum in Brian Jonestown Massacre, actually. She still does sometimes. But we made an instrumental post-metal record. It's coming out on Nefarious Industries, like a vinyl, next year. I'm just waiting on the test vinyl, so that's all wrapped up. And then I got Death of Satan, which was the 9th Simulacrum, just came out a couple weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
Ninth Circle, which is the second Chaos Magick record, comes out in the fall along with Bagatelles.
And that was the one you used the clean guitar thing on? Is that what
yeah, it's the second record.
I knew about that project, so that's cool, yeah.
Yeah, there was another that the first of those records came out in April of this year.
Okay.
So there was, and that's Simulacrum plus Brian Marcella on Rhodes and Mellotron. So that's pretty cool. And then I have new John From I've been working on. A new record with Kenny Growhowski is in the band now because Eli had to move to Massachusetts. So Kenny took over. So we've been almost through a new record. And hopefully Relapse will put it out. Just think they will. And then I have 2 more Zorn records this fall for Simulacrum and Chaos Magick. So like 1 Simulacrum, 1 Chaos Magick. Yeah, so that's a lot of shit.
You feeling lazy, Adam?
Feeling lazy? Are you kidding? Feeling lazy? It's like a picture of me by the word in the dictionary right now. I mean, all of us.
Let's be clear. I'm not doing this to make anyone feel lazy.
Oh no, I'm not taking it that way.
No, of course, but that's
amazing.
That's the American shit.
No, it's the perfectionist tendencies in me that caused me to go, no, I'm putting that out.
It's awesome.
I'm blessed to do it, and the perfectionist in me has to be like cool with the Simulacrum record. I guess I did 4 Zorn records this year. That's crazy. He's a maniac. I mean, whatever. It's why I'm able to live in New York.
So, I mean, if you don't hit 50 records this year, I think we'll be a little disappointed.
I think
I'll probably hit 50 records in 2022, and I'm thrilled about that. I have no regrets at all, and it's not to prove that I did anything. It's to explore the subconscious and inspire people and make them feel better, because shit is horrible right now.
Yeah, I think it's a good, like, I don't know what the quality is. I was talking to my sister about this the other day, but it's like drive. Like, why do certain people have a certain drive, and like just constantly keep seeking. And it's like, if you have that drive, and we've all met these people. I think we probably all are these people. But it's like, opportunities come your way when you have that sort of quality, right?
True.
You sort of just put yourself in these positions. It's not even being intelligent or clever or any of those kind of things.
No,
You're not the smartest or whatever necessarily, or any of those.
No.
It's just, you always feel like you can keep going and keep doing better, or keep striving. Like, and why it's kind of an interesting, like, why does that even happen? Like, why does some people seem to not have that really, but others do, or whatever? Good or bad, it's not about good or bad, but it's just interesting that the people that seem to have that, like, you don't have to really, like, they're gonna create stuff.
Right, because they're not gonna do it for anybody else. I think that's the big thing.
It right there. Yep. That is you nailed it right on the head. It's not about, like, this is for this audience or this is for this.
Yeah.
It's like, this is for me. And if you like it, great. But honestly, I can't function with having it to be for somebody else. Like, I've played on other people's stuff, and that's great, and I enjoyed it, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, like, for my own music, it's like, this is just for me. This is for my ears, and it'll get there if I want it out there. And that whole artist conundrum of wanting the exposure, but at the same time to be hidden behind it.
That's really a thing I struggle with a lot. It's really rough. I'm really happy you said that, because it is like, I want the exposure, but I want to be invisible.
Yeah.
And what is that? I don't know what to do with that. You know what I mean? And that's, I think, why I gravitated towards forming these bands that were like, I was kind of obscure in the situation until Zorn put me on, and people kind of got hip to what I was doing overall a little more, and I started getting more credit. But before that, no one knew what I was or who I was doing or anything, because I didn't want them to. I didn't want to be a rock star. I wanted to be invisible. Exactly what you're saying. And I don't really, in this age of Instagram and oversharing everything, I don't really know how to reconcile the fact that, no one's pushing back on the notion that like we're all expected to just be influencers right now, and that doesn't have anything to do with playing music. And Spotify is straight up like, just give up albums. It's not relevant, and neither are bands, by the way. And so just make singles for us, and we'll pay you like nothing, and just make an assembly line for us, and we'll put you on these playlists that people use as background music. And like, that might be hyper cynical, fine, but that from my perspective is absolutely what's going on. And there's do we really have no choice? You know what I mean? I don't believe that I have no choice.
It's the old idea. Like, one of the big things is like, what's the counterculture today? Like,
right, because it's on the internet that there's nothing hidden. There's no underground.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, I was having this conversation the other day. There's no underground. There's the internet. So the Instagram's the underground in a way, but it's like, that's not even underground. It's like mainstream television, right? Because everyone's on it. So it's just not. It's just such a different ball game. And what I idealized when I was wanting to do bands, were like these like space pirate kind of characters that just kind of like were like outcasts of society that like lived on the margins and like stayed on tour, period. And like you had to like search out information on them, but all their records were like golden. That was always my model. And it's just like, I got to reconcile with the fact that that's like being a dad at this point. It's just not the vibe, and it's not going to happen. And, I got to adjust to the new realities somehow. But I've struggled with that loads recently, because it's like, all right, and then of course, being like, I'm on my own, fuck you. Like, that's my attitude basically. But it's like, there's cons to that, right? Like, I'm making so many albums. Do people need this many albums from me? Right? That's the cynical voice. It's like, aren't you being a little crazy egotistical right now? Like, look at me. And it's like, because to me, that's not what it's about, but it's going to come off that way. Right?
Yeah.
Like, but like, it's just all these convoluted, contradictory feelings. That's the roughest to me. Understanding how to relate to the public. I think I have the biggest issues with that. I don't think I figured it out.
I don't think you're alone.
Yeah.
No, it's really hard. It's really, really hard. And, we can look at YouTube and the channel, like people doing channels is like a new thing, or podcasts, what you guys are doing. All that's a part of it. But there's something so bizarre about the fact that like, what we're supposed to spend our time doing right now is like not practicing, not composing, not improvising, but marketing. You know what I mean? And like that it's just not, we wouldn't have a Coltrane if he was obsessed with Instagram, right? Like you wouldn't have him. Yeah, no doubt. He'd be too distracted. And like, too with Bubble, even taking one generation ago, I know that there was nothing to do in their town, so they all got together and like every day at this coffee shop, in this cafe or diner or whatever, and just talked for like 6 hours. And like, yeah, that's probably why they made great albums, right? If they all had smartphones and video games and Call of Duty, like they're not meeting up. They're chilling in their house. They're texting maybe, right? Yeah. So there's just the communication, like the smartphones and everything post 2000 is a real Faustian bargain, which is like everything we got, we lost a bunch of shit. And people that never had it had no idea what they even lost. So people growing up playing along to hyper quantized music and playing along to shit on YouTube, they don't even know how to interact with people in a room. So, now that this is rare for certain musicians, it needs to be maintained and treated as the precious thing because our culture is not supporting it. It's saying, fuck that, who cares? So, like, the people that care about that, it's more high stakes that they do it, in my opinion. It's more of a war because, like, there's more quantization, there's more only white key music, there's more redundant aesthetic, there's more LARPing, there's more Comic-Con type approaches, like none of that is like, it's not old man shouting at cloud to be like, that's not the same as Coltrane. That's factual, and it's not about like a hierarchy. It's just, intent. It's like there's elevated intent and then there's gutter intent, right? Like just filling in a production template to get clicks that week and then you throw it in the garbage can. That's not Love Supreme. That's not Sunship. That's not Intermounting Flame. You know what I mean? It's like I'm not listening to that next week.
Yeah, that reminds me of.
So it's like, what am I doing? Does it have substance? Am I really giving anything to anybody? And like, maybe I'm wrong. I take the fact that like, I believe that I'm giving something to substance to people. Like that's my article of faith that isn't very rational because it's probably not true 100% of the time, but I still have to do it. I must do it. I think artists, again, what you're asking is like artists are in the category for some reason, I had this feeling like regressions must happen. Retro must happen. And then when Zorn wanted to do Simulacrum, he was like, it has to be Kenny and Hollenberg. It has to be Growhowski and Hollenberg. So it's like, certain people, they're just like, this must happen. I can't tell you why. It's not rational. I'm possessed. That's why it must happen.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't explain it. Sorry. And it's like, to a materialistic culture, we don't understand that. It's like, but you have no guarantee. What do you mean? And it's like, yeah, exactly. No guarantee, which means it's exciting, which means it's an adventure. It's like, but I need to know that it was worth it. That's what shuts everything down. That's the conscious mind. So that's, to me, like, the more I can like liberate myself from that, the more this shit opens up into other dimensions. And that's why I'm like, I'm just starting. I don't even think I'm anywhere. And that sounds crazy, but it's just how I feel. And I think it's because of that perspective. It's like, I did regressions. I did it. I'm in with Zorn. The end. It's like, no, I still think I'm a student. I'm just starting, Yeah. I think the best is yet to come. Absolutely. So
like that interview with the 92-year-old cellist who's practiced hours and hours every day, and they're like, "Why do you still practice?" He's like, "Because I think I'm getting better."
Exactly. And again, that's the classical jazz shit. That's not going to come from Instagram. That's like real human soul, yearning, desire, intent. It's actually magic. What is Instagram doing? It's siphoning our magic into a fake idolatry. It's like, what I mean? It's just like
Practical culture, to throw it back to that old episode that we did. That's exactly what it is.
Right. And then for you, like what you said, I'm like, I don't know how to interact with that.
I just don't care. I mean, to be blunt,
I don't care, but then I worry that I'm just gonna wall myself in. You know what I mean? Like, because I want people to listen to something if I work on it for 5 fucking years and spend 200-300 hours. I want people to know about it. Yeah, I want it to be as popular as possible. I'm not going to suck up to them. But just the issue of being like, I'm not going to suck up to you, but here I am. Like, how do you do that?
I think you just answered your question. That's exactly what you do. I'm not going to suck up to you, but here I am. And that's where you get that inclusivity that's exclusive at the same time.
Right. That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yes, exactly.
And I mean, you can't go off of that, like I hate the marketing thing.
Everyone does. It's horrible.
It's taken away time from music for me.
Well, that's why I know musicians, and I'm like, they don't care about the label thing. They just want to do it because they don't want to deal with that. And like, one of the labels will just be, well, they have a thing that they follow, and I know what to expect. And I guess where I'm at too with that shit is like, Nefarious Industries, for example, like I really like their model, honestly, because they just have a PR person built in and it's just attached to the deal. And it just goes through the motions, through the rock press. And there's really not that many rock blogs at this point. Like it's like 5 or 6. And like, so they have a relationship, that company with them. You get put through there. So, when I did that band Titan to Tachyons with Sally playing bass, she wrote all that stuff and she paid for it and it's her band. But I was very impressed with how Greg put that out. Because it's like I realized, what's great about the underground rock world is it really is a meritocracy, and these types of listeners are really looking for sincerity desperately. They don't want LARPing. They don't want the scene reiterated. They don't want something they can predict, and they don't want something they've heard before. So I realized, like, the way the underground music world works, it seems to me, is like you drop something out of the sky, it floats down the mountain, and it flies over most people's heads. And then the people it does, like it's like a couple hundred people, it doesn't fly over their head. The record kind of builds in stature, but no one's even checking it out for like 2 years. Like that's really what I realized. And I realized before I released a lot of records, I felt some kind of way about that. But now I'm kind of weirdly relieved because putting out a record and doing that, even doing Metal Injection, Metal Sucks, Blabbermouth, lamb goat, whatever the fuck. That's the standard thing. Like that's
Yeah.
just, it's almost like a formality, and it doesn't matter what people say. It doesn't matter if they don't like it, and it doesn't matter if they like it, because no one cares. Music reviews have zero value, and anyone that's even following it knows it's payola. So it's almost like this shit used to work me up so much, and I realized like just go through that stupid motion. It gets down the hill, and if it's righteous, people figure it out, and then 2 years later they start hitting you up about it. I mean, there's people hitting me up. That Zorn does no marketing. He's literally anti-marketing. There's people hitting me up about like shit I did in 2016. They're like just hearing it, and I'm like, I didn't think I understood that's how it works. But when everything is constipated, there's so many releases, no one can check them all out. It's probably fair to assume that 80% of it is crap, and that's not fucked up to say. That's just basic numbers, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going to listen to anything until you know like that's cool. That's the game to me. That's what it seems like.
Right, or
so
you have to find people like in the right frame of mind or the right,
Right.
reference or something to get them to that point.
reference, right? And so like Cleric having the association of Bungle stamping it, Zorn stamping it, that's enough to get it over the hill. It's
Right.
like, oh, it's the word spreads. Then we open for Bungle, the word spreads. It's still obscure.
They see the name a couple times, and it's like,
You
oh,
keep saying it.
I saw
right.
that name.
I heard of that.
I saw
it.
Trey talk about that, or I saw this. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so really the association thing is what got me over the hill.
or even you have the what is there's. I think it was Malcolm Gladwell or something, but he had this top like the maven is the person that's like in the middle, like if you wanted to get a letter to the president, it only takes like 7 people to get to that president sort of idea. And
Yeah.
what ends up happening is like if you said, hey, I want to get this to the president, he would say, well, who do I know that might know somebody that know, right? And then you go to that person, and that person knows somebody that eventually it actually only takes a few steps to actually get a letter to the president, for instance. But he calls those people that what they did this experiment is they had everybody try to get to some doctor or something like this. This is sort of pre-internet, and they all ended up getting to the same person before the doctor or whatever, because that person was what they call like a maven. They ended up, I think I'm using the right term. They're like the people that know everyone and like connect all these things together. So I think like in that underground scene too, it's like if it gets to one of those people, they get it to all these other people, but you can't like almost can't go directly to them. It's like they have to, it kind of eventually gets to those people. It's easy to pick the famous ones.
Yeah, I mean, like I think this again goes to like how, looking at the hip hop scene for metal people is like, well, I don't know, that's the typical reaction. But I'm really following the hip hop scene because they're way better at being aware of how to get their shit out there.
Yeah.
And it is very similar. It's just underground music, rock music that's mathy and noisy as shit is like not popular at all compared to hip hop. But in terms of things like clout absolutely exists in underground music. Now, you could mock that when there's very little money on the table, but just in terms of like if you want people to get your record, you want people to hear your record, Trey Spruance and all of Bungle stamping it, being like, this is the best band out. Yeah. That definitely helps for sure, because there's people that follow them more than they're following Pitchfork. Pitchfork's less serious to me by a billion than Trey telling me about a new band, or the guy, my friend Luke from, Thanafaxath, like any musician I respect, or Colin being like, you got to check this out, or, any musician that's like, you really have to hear this. Like Kenny told me about Breadwinner and Confessor and Loincloth, and I had no idea about that drummer, and he's like, it's like one of my favorite bands, and I just missed all that shit. So it's just like, I would not check that out because Decibel's like, this is the most extreme thing ever created. And like following week, this is the most extreme thing of all time. This is the blackest, bleakest hole of a record. You cannot stand it. It's just all sounds the same. It's again, LARPing it's like, we should start saying that, because like, fuck these scenes, dude. It's not music. It's literally like,
I hate it. Yeah,
it's LARPing. It's Comic-Con. It's like, I bought the costume yesterday. It came today. Now I'm at the show. So I just want, like, I think like, I really see scenes as a problem. I'm not saying they're not useful, because we have to network and go on tours, but they're closed systems that are insular and
It's very
incestuous.
tribal. You know,
What was that?
It's all tribal.
It's tribal, right? And that's the whole problem with not just the music scenes in general, but the country is like everyone is tribal. It's like, are you in my tribe or not? Are you with me or against me? If you're against me, I dig in my heels. If you're with me, I don't criticize anything you do. And like literally, that's where we're living. And so, you know, the music scenes are manifestations of that. And it really helps me to leave the country. Like I just went to Slovenia to play Simulacrum on for a jazz fest. And, you know, obviously I understand it's a former Soviet country. You know, it's not a perfect country, but they're nowhere near as fractured as we are. And you got to wonder yourself why. You know what I mean? Like, and like, it just comes in your head. You can't help but think about it because it's just the edginess isn't in the air. And I know when I go on tour too, when I go into Canada, the edginess isn't in the air. It doesn't mean it's not there. It's just not as maniacal as in America. And, you know, there's something about our style of individualism that is like toxic. And it plays out in all these ways. And, you know, the only chance, in my opinion, to self-actualize is to, like, leave these. Like, because they're Plato's cave. You should just, like, look over there, look over there. Don't look at yourself. That's stupid. It's like demean yourself. Like, get away from your soul. Enter these closed systems. You know, there's one piece of advice that I always took to heart that Zorn told me is, like, you know, create your own system or be enslaved by another. And I think that is absolutely measurably true. It's just raw philosophy, like inarguable. And I try to think about that when like, oh shit, I got to go back and work at a DVD factory for fucking $9 an hour because of this tour, and I have nothing going on in the real world. So shit's real. You know what I mean? Like I think about all that. Like so, like I don't know. All this stuff is connected. You know, like your view of society, how you navigate the psychic realm it's created, because it's a real minefield. Because it's so materialistic, and it's like you realize when you go to other countries, it's not like it's not there. It's just not so emphasized. Like we tie our identity to materialism and our riches and our wealth and our status. And it's like for me to do what I need to do, I need to ignore everyone coming at me with that value system, and I need to ignore it completely in myself. So you know that's the only chance I have of actually achieving my artistic goals. And so you know. That's a real like leap of faith a lot of people wouldn't make, but I don't know. I think you have to face your fear. That's really what I would say to anybody, like a composer, musician, whatever you're afraid of, go right towards it.
Oh yeah,
and enter it, like because that's growth. That's what you're afraid of.
That was going to be my next question. Is like if you were going to sum up a piece of advice for any budding musician or just anybody that's out there trying to, not even, I hate to use the term make it, but so I'm going to.
It's a really 90s term we should retire. Yeah, yeah. But I know what you mean. Make it
create.
Self-actualize, right? Like self-actualize, make your own world, bring people into it, inspire people, be sincere. I will tell you for number one, for me personally, what works, and I won't make it a dogma, but like for me personally, the worst advice always comes from friends and family. Always. I'm sorry. They're concerned, but they don't understand. They never will. Just leave it. Forget about it. Like it's very tough for certain musicians to forget about, you know, what their friends and family think because they want approval. But that's the first wall that you have to clear.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. And if they're telling you you're doing the right thing, you're probably boring. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If you're pissing them off, yes. And I mean, it's not as binary as that, but like just use that as a baseline principle if you really want to get into it. Because, I mean, not only my friends and family can never understand what I'm doing, they don't even understand what motivated me to do what I'm doing. So there's multiple layers. They're just never understanding. So it's on the artist to just go forward anyway and not get traumatized and get mad and get sucked into that shit. Is just leave it on the ground and go above it and go. You know, and I would say to anybody, if you're afraid to do something, that means do it. And especially when it comes to art, like if you're playing with people and you're the man in the band and everyone else is just like chilling, or you know, keeping up to you and you're just chilling, right? Like that's, you know, you're not in the right band. Like you need to be playing with people that scare you if that's possible. And if it's not possible, just travel somewhere and meet someone like that. You know, whatever you can do. Like, all we did with Cleric was hand tray a demo of Rush of Blood after a Secret Chief show, and I know what he did, and I'm sorry, this is what people do. Is like, I know, like, Kenny told me, he said he's got a stack of demos, and this is what this is what happens because there's too much music. He puts on the first demo, no, second demo, no, second demo, no. Like within 5-10 seconds, skipping through it, bullshit. He can tell. He doesn't even need to listen to it. Puts on Rush of Blood, is like, oh. And like within the intro, he was in it. He was like, that's it. By the intro, that's 30 seconds. He was like, this band's cool. So that tells you, and to me, that's sincerity, lack of fear, lack of fear of risk, like being excited to confront boundary, being excited to break through boundary, all those things come together to attract someone like that because that's his legacy. He's not repeating himself. I mean, a little bit, but not really. He's all over the place. So it's like he heard that it's just liberated, And I think what I took from him and Zorn is way more than Meshuggah and Tool, which is what I was into right before that. Right? Is like they're liberated. They're doing anything. They're doing anything with any sound. They're not just. They didn't pick one thing. I mean, you could say Meshuggah's almost like an AC/DC type approach to a band, right? Oh, yeah. You could, it's just that style, but the model, it's much more like that. Whereas like what Zorn and Trey are doing, it's just this free form, anything goes, and that's like anti-ideological. It's anti-style. It's really what attracted me is the genre busting, because you're busting genre up. You're going in the genre and you're just subverting it, and you're like making a mockery of it as an idea. It doesn't mean blues is going to cease to exist. But you're the Dionysian presence within the terrain that like makes everything chaotic. You're the chaotic good, right? So that's where I try to operate from, because I think that's what resonates with me the most. Is this sort of explosive, like things exploding kind of. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
that's good.
No, it's great. Right, it's been an awesome interview.
Oh, great! I'm glad to hear.
Yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. It's great talk. You guys ask amazing questions, useful questions, and the crazy people want to talk about this stuff more. This is what people should talk about when they talk about these. Much more related to what it actually is, and whatever the fuck's going on Instagram.
Absolutely, with that one.
Yeah.
Oh, that reminded me too that we were talking about it earlier. That like Eddie Murphy, right? He was on Jerry Seinfeld's coffee whatever thing. He was talking though, like after he got really famous, he basically couldn't do stand-up anymore because he could never practice it, And he would go somewhere and then somebody would write about it in the paper the next day. But now, like with Instagram, we're like almost instantly famous in a sense. Like,
yeah.
You have no safe space to like try things out with small audiences or small peer groups, right? Because it instantly gets. It's like you could never become as good as Eddie Murphy did in the early days because you can't try it out unless you dump. Like you have to dump the Instagram thing and you have to dump the. You can't put yourself in that position. And same with like Coltrane, where you have to try these things out, like to develop them in a safe-ish space without trying to polish it.
I'm really glad you mentioned that. Yeah. Absolutely. You have to have a safe space, literally, not like in the way like it's talked about, contemporarily, but just a literal, like you can experiment. There's no stakes,
right?
And you can sort it out, and there's no judgment. But
it's not on the internet forever, or whatever. Yeah.
Right. And I really feel that you can see this played out in our culture, like no one wants to be wrong kind of thing. Everyone's hyper defensive. Like it's not really rational. Like why would I know about every single thing, every part of it exactly right? And I would never know anything wrong. Well, it's because the way the comment sections of these sites are designed, it's humiliation. So everyone's trying to humiliate each other, and like, that's the internet. We all know it, right? So like you do kind of have to insulate your own world and like rise above the planet. And it's like these are little ants fighting and I'm on a cloud like saying Om, and like I have like a steady stream of the fifth dimensional continuum, like just streaming through my head, and you know, and I'm capturing it, and I'm going to mine the diamond, and it's like you leave the earth if you're doing it the right way. You know what I mean? In my opinion, the subconscious liberates you, whereas the conscious mind is like completely in awe and hypnotized and like addicted to these new virtual terrains, right? Where it's just like this is how we define ourselves. You know, it's like doesn't it bum you out if like only 6 people like that post? Sure. And it's like we really make it like we tie our expectation to our identity and how successful we want to think we are, which is truly absurd because the algorithm's just random. It's like you can see it just based on how consistent you are. Once in a while, randomly, a big one happens, and then keep posting. Now no one's looking at it. It's really just consistency, but it's very hard to grapple with because you're just like, no one cares. And it's like, it's not really a real measurement. That's the illusion. You know what I mean?
If only the algorithms were random, you know, to an extent, it's like they can.
It should be random.
It should be random. Or even better, it should be whatever the hell I want it to be.
Right.
You know, like, right. I want it to come in chronological order. I don't really care about anything else. That's fine. You know, that's cool. Chronological is great. Yeah. So yeah, it's but now it's like, you know, advertising this and advertising that, and I think, you know, maybe this is because I'm just like so many books on evolutionary psychology lately. It's just like the whole idea of the tribalistic putting things into a box. You know, part of that is literally how we learn to survive. Like,
you're right. Yeah, it's true. You're right. Yeah.
Look at this like, oh, that's a lion. That will kill me.
Yeah.
You know, be able to go like, okay, that kind of looks like a lion, so that's probably not good. That's about that's a tiger, but that's still in the same category. So there's to some extent, it's like that's the. I don't want to say subconscious in the sense of like what we've been talking about, but that's the underlying survival instinct. That's like deep brain thing that just happens automatically.
You're right. The reptile brain, I think.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So like we got that going on, but I think maybe the issue is that aspect of us is instantaneously engaged when we're scrolling through a social media feed, because that's exactly what we're doing. It's so fast, we don't have time to actually use the front part of our brain and think about it. We're automatically responding it from the back part and going, okay, this, click, this, like this angry rant, you know, or whatever. It's like I cut off all the social media stuff, and I'm not like putting myself up as like some.
No, it's.
But it got to a point where it's like, what the hell am I wasting my damn time?
I think everyone kind of felt that way, especially after 2020. We were just all so exhausted by how toxic everything was. And you know, especially the social dilemma, that movie. I mean, it's a lot of obvious shit, but I didn't really realize, you know, I'm a paranoid person to an extent, but I didn't realize it's like open mind source hacking. That's not overly paranoid. It's
not at all.
And you know, I have to check myself in the morning, because a lot of times the first thing I do, I omit this, like it's just, let me check Facebook. And then, you know, what catches my attention? Oh, you know, here's this big political issue that's really toxic and affects all my friends and me, and I have deep emotions about. Let me read the comments. Good Lord. And like, that's just like the first thing of the day, and you're immediately like spun out. I don't think it's psychologically healthy for people, and I think Facebook knows that, and they know how to make it as addictive as possible. They know what my weaknesses are. Like they know more than I do. And again, like to go back to your evolutionary point about the lion, we're not evolved to deal with that. We're not evolved to comprehend that much information. We're not evolved to understand what's happening in the big picture. We're not evolved enough to adjust our behavior accordingly. It's a real Faustian bargain in a very deep sense, and I don't think it's alarmist or unreasonable for people to just go off it for months at a time, because it does make people depressed, because it's everyone's curated life of what they want to project, and our mind can't comprehend that, so we think it's just the real village square. And that's a real problem, because it's a traumatic. If that was the real village square, I'd kill myself. So it's not the village square. It's a toxic algorithm that is feeding off of us, and it's just hard for even me personally, knowing what I know about it intellectually, viscerally, it's very hard to detach, especially in a COVID world where there is no public square and everyone's freaked out and, you know, we're already isolated. I worry that it's just going to be a sort of Brave New World type situation where they just, you know, it just keeps power, like this type of power just keeps getting centralized, like just like one like head king. You know, it seems like we're just heading towards like recreating divine right of kings, but just in terms of like private speculative capitalism. And I think Facebook and its culture and the way it's been last few years is just another, you know, example of that. And it's another thing in the way of a musician who honestly, you know, the biggest problem right now is no one's bored. And I don't think anyone realizes how big of an issue that is. I wrote music because I was bored, because there wasn't a smartphone, because I was sitting in class bored out of my fucking mind and songs came into my head. And, you know, if you're just distracting yourself, your attention span goes down and down and down. Now it's 6 seconds long. You think you can write anything? You think you can even sit there in silence for 6 seconds? No, you can't. So like, this is where, you know, this is where I kind of feel like I find myself going back to Greek philosophy now, because I find the feedback loop of American politics completely useless. It leads nowhere. It sucks everyone's energy. It does nothing. You know, barely anything happens anyway. People get so mad and it's for no reason anyway. So like, I find myself going back to like Marcus Aurelius, you know, Diogenes, Nietzsche, you know, Epictetus, like Heraclitus, like, because that shit is always true. And it's more true than ever right now. And so that's so
very hard right there.
Yeah, so that to me is like the antidote. Again, purification psychologically as much as you're able to, which means purging of toxic elements, literally, in your life. And then philosophy, not politics. Like, fuck politics. It's like just, it's useless. Like philosophy is a greater expansion right now for me, especially Stoicism, and, you know, it's just not trapped in itself. It's always true, and it really helps with everything that's happening right now. So I would say, you know, to anyone that wants to look beyond like culture and really explore what culture is not your friend means, look into ancient philosophy, practice silence, practice boredom, like write from the subconscious. Don't try to be clever. Try to feel things. Try to engage with your senses. Don't try to outwit people. That would be my advice, because, you know, the hyper-rational, hyper-materialistic, it shuts something down profound in us that we're missing out on. It's not about my way is better. It's about we're missing half of it. You know what I mean? We only got Apollo. So I want more madness in the musicians I listen to. That's if I could say to anybody, you know, stop quantizing your shit, start taking risks, start being like off-putting. You know, if you want to be lush and beautiful, give me a new version of it. Don't just copy Hiatus Coyote or an Esperanza Spalding. Like, come up with your own world. You know, build your language. Like, really do music for its own sake, and I'll love it. You know, and so will every music listener. That's sincere.
That is the most poetic way to end. Yeah, absolutely. So, that was great.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Man.
I'm sure we'll talk more.
Yep.
Yeah, man. Well, good luck on the projects, and I'm like, I know what I'm listening to over the next.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I need some new music. Never mind. Matthew exists, so it's just gonna be churned out. You know.
2022 will be a windfall for my couple thousand fans.
Hey, that's all it takes, man. That's
all it takes. Yeah. Well, you know, I got really ambitious plans. I don't think I'm at the ceiling yet, and all will be revealed.
Matt, is there a good place for anyone to actually follow what you're doing?
I mean, ironically, Facebook, but you know, I'm going to get on.
At least you're gonna have a humor about it,
right? There's nothing. It's a joke. Everything's a joke. Yeah. But like, I'll really, I'm going to get on Instagram. Honestly, just
Do you have a website other than like the Cleric ones or whatever? No, okay.
I really am like, you know, trying to have
Anonymous. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm anonymous. I'm anonymous. No, but no, I'm gonna get more of my shit together before 2022.
Well, we'll keep sharing it.
Centralized thing. For right now, if you just go on Discogs and search Matt Hollenberg guitar and go on to Discogs, it has basically the whole discography minus a couple albums. I think most of it's cool. I mean, the stuff I'm most proud of is Cleric, Shardik, and iNFiNieN. And I would suggest that, you know, if you want to really know what my voice as a composer is like, you check out the three of those things. Zorn, I'm the guitarist, and, you know, you'll hear my improv voice, but kind of like I was saying, it's like a gambling type context. It's not very heady. It's very spontaneous, you know, so that might be hit or miss with you. But, you know, the stuff I really work on are, you know, Cleric, iNFiNieN, Shardik. Yeah, that's really what I'm trying to put on the table. And